I'm Polly Warren and welcome to the Positive Perimenopause Podcast. This is the place for some positive inspiration to help you through the rollercoaster ride of perimenopause. I truly believe that with the right support, knowledge and wellness tools, you can feel your best yet, because I'm learning this life phase can be a truly exciting and often pivotal time of life. With every episode, my mission is to support and empower you to own your menopause, because it's time to start taking care of the most important person, and yes, that's you. So thank you for being here and sharing your time with me. Now let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the Positive Perimenopause Podcast. I hope you are very well. I am full of cold as I record this. I thought I had escaped, so I'm really annoyed. My daughter was off school all of last week with a real lingering something. I'm not quite sure what it was. And I thought, yay, I've escaped. And then at the weekend, I'm going through the cycles, the sore throat, the blocked up nose. It's very boring. And Alfie, he's off school today. Giles has had it getting it too. So, yep, we're in that cycle of coughs and colds in this house, which isn't much fun. However, I am listening to my body and I'm just going to be looking after myself. I have a lovely hot, warm lemon and honey and ginger as I sit here and record this. And this is very much in keeping with what we're going to be talking about today in this week's episode. We're going to be talking about working with our natural rhythms as opposed to against them. You're probably aware that men have a hormonal cycle that lasts 24 hours, whereas us women have hormonal cycles that last approximately 28 days. We're not the same. We're very different, biologically different. And this is often overlooked and actually has a real impact on how we experience work, how we experience stress, but also success. For the last century, us women have been striving for equal rights, and quite rightly, as we should. But the issue is that we've almost taken it so far because we've been striving for equal rights in a very male world. But sometimes we forget along the way that actually we are biologically different to men. As women, we're designed to ebb and flow in sync with our cycles as opposed to ignoring them. And this cyclical nature, it's not a weakness. It's actually a source of strength and resilience. However, in a society that glorifies the hustle and the busyness, we often ignore our body's natural rhythms. And that's what leads to burnout and exhaustion. But when we actually embrace our cyclical nature and we work in harmony with our bodies, that's when we can achieve so much more in a way that is sustainable and aligned with our true selves. And that is what we're going to be talking about this week with my wonderful guest, Olivia Heine, who is an NLP coach and an expert in all things cycle syncing, cyclical living. Olivia's approach really is truly revolutionary to productivity, to success. She is a woman on a mission to really deconstruct the conditioning that leads to burnout and also which blocks us from getting the success that so many of us deserve and want. And instead, what she does is she's teaching us how to reclaim our cyclical wisdom, because it's all within us, and also how to heal from this real hustle-induced lifestyle, which we are so familiar with. I loved talking to Olivia. For one so young, she really is so wise. So without further ado, please welcome the absolutely wonderful Olivia Heine. Welcome, Olivia. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation. I feel like there's just so many nuggets of wisdom that we're going to bring together from both of our respective sides today.
Yeah, exactly. Because let me just tell the listeners how we came to be together. So I am literally about to complete this incredible breathwork course, which I've talked about a lot on this podcast, but I'm just coming to the end of it. But we've had to do a lot of practice with people within the community of the breathwork training. And one of the people who I've been doing a lot of practice with, meeting on a weekly basis, is your mum, Wendy, who I absolutely love. And Wendy said to me, oh, you should speak to my daughter. She's doing some really cool things. And I just can't believe that I'm sitting opposite her, because Wendy, I thought she was the same age as me. And then she said, is she 58?
She's 56.
56. Anyway, because I've just turned 50 and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're that old, Wendy, because she looks incredible. And how can you possibly have a daughter old enough to be, having her own business and everything? So, but you're here and you're in your 20s, aren't you?
I'm in my late 20s, yes.
Yeah, in your 20s. So it's really nice to have. I think probably you're the youngest person I've had on the podcast. So
I love
exciting.
that.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it. Bringing all your wisdom to us. So, Olivia, I'd love to really, first of all, for you to tell us what it is you do and how did you come to do what you are doing today?
Yeah, so I am an NLP and Sacred Success Coach. And so my focus and mission is to help women work like women, or as I call them, women, in order to revolutionize the way that they do work, the way that we understand work as a society, and create what I like to call sacred success. So success that actually feels good, that doesn't put our nervous systems into a deregulation state, that allows us to feel really supported. And at the end of the day, I'm of the belief that the reason we want the goals that we want is because of the feeling frequency that we're going to get when we achieve them or experience them. Like, we don't want just the money or just the clients or just the business or just the job. Like, we want to have that feeling of, okay, I feel freedom, or I feel security, or I feel abundant, and whatever else might come with that. And so this kind of hustle mentality that's really expanded over the last couple decades, and especially like as women, this pressure to step into it and compete in a certain way that doesn't necessarily align with our own inherent and cyclical nature, is really kind of creating a harmful cycle of how we work and how we feel we need to change ourselves to then do success. So that's my mission, and that's the work that I do with my clients one-on-one and in my courses. And the way that I came into this work has been a bit of a longer journey, but of course, it's always that personal experience of, okay, I was the hustler, I was the overachiever. I don't know what you've talked about with my mother in terms of that, but I come from a family of separation and divorce, and that obviously created a lot of narratives as well around like wanting to show up, wanting to work a certain way and do really well in order to gain attention or validation, because I didn't feel like I was maybe getting that at certain points. And it really created this toxic way of working where I really disregarded myself in order to please other people. I'm also the oldest of three, and so that kind of mothering responsibility that the oldest child often takes over definitely came into play there, feeling again like it was all on me. And of course, that's not inherently true, but as a teenager, you're like, okay, I have to just do everything. I want to make everyone else happy. I want to leave as little to do for anyone else, like both my parents, so that they don't feel extra stress. And at one point, you just start moving away from what your actual needs are and what your actual desires are, and start just listening to what everyone else wants from you. And that then paired later on with being on birth control for many, many years, and then eventually coming off of it and just realizing how disconnected I was and how much then started to surface that was being suppressed, ended up guiding me towards this direction of healing through my womb and with my own cyclical nature.
A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you. Wow, yeah, I think so many of us, well, I certainly can totally relate to everything you've just said, in the sense that I know myself, I have always pushed, worked super hard, wanting to do everything perfectly, feel like I've got something to prove always. And I think, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone, that it just seems to be a very common mentality that we all have. We've got to push, push, push. We've got to do. Why do you think, Olivia, that is so universal?
I mean, I think on the one hand, we have the societal narratives around what success is, and we learn these from a very early age around what our parents teach us, how we need to work to make money, if it's hard or easy to make money, how much work we have to put into creating the lifestyle that we maybe want, or even the way that we see certain lifestyles. And then, of course, we have what we see on TV and how people talk about work there. And the classic high achieving like boss woman who lives in the big city, and like what does she do? And she's like hitting the pavement and making things happen in her life. And so we start to kind of take on these narratives on a societal level. And I think that that's true for men and women alike. We definitely have our own kind of take on all of those individual narratives. But I think also for women specifically, there's the phenomenon from the last couple decades and even 100 years with the revolution of women coming into the workplace, having more agency, and all of that stuff is super important and has been really important in, the development of our society. And at the same time, it has kind of created a narrative where if you want to be in the workplace as a woman, you have to be like a man. You have to change your natural being and cycles in order to compete with that energy. And the reason I say that is because the public sphere of work was created by men for men initially. Like women were culturally and hundreds of years ago in the home. They were the nurturers, they were the caregivers. And that's not to say that we as women can't also run businesses and be in the working sphere and in the work world, but it's the way that we do it. And so with that feminist revolution and women coming into the workplace, then what ended up happening was us then changing ourselves and trying to take on more of that masculine energy in how we show up to work, as opposed to really claiming our feminine energy in that space.
Gosh, I just have to think back to my late 30s, early 40s. I had three small children. So my husband was working he would get the train, which would take him an hour every day to go to work. I was sort of in our hometown, but I was also a primary school teacher at the time. So I would need to be in work at 7:30, and it was a constant juggle of children here, children there. I would be the one who would be doing the work, trying to do doing it as well as I possibly could, picking up the children. If one was ill, I'd be the one having to go. But it was kind of like trying to do the job and then doing everything else around the job, coming home, cooking dinner, making sure the house was clean and tidy. And and I did at one point become incredibly resentful of my husband because I was like, you just go to work. I mean, how easy is that? And you get to sit on a train for an hour to go to work and have it all to yourself. You
get quiet time.
Exactly. You get that time off. And I just hear this so much from so many other women who are in that juggle of life. And then we just seem to take it all on, and it's been something which I have really noticed, particularly as well as women going through midlife, that they just are notoriously bad at then creating space for themselves, but feeling like they've got to, and particularly if they've got careers where they've got to function really, really at a high level, it's virtually impossible to, it feels impossible. So I'm so intrigued, Olivia. How do we get to it from a state of that, of kind of, living like that, to actually living in a way which feels much easier so we can get into a state of flow?
Yeah. So I see this as twofold, and it kind of perfectly sets up the process that I go through with my clients. But on the one hand, we really want to look at actually healing the hustle. So you made a great comment right now about like going through that phase of like feeling like you're doing everything, starting to feel resentful. And what's really happening there is like this caregiver energy is coming through, like this, how we're conditioned to show up and work to serve other people. And that often comes through for us specifically as women. And so, like you said, he just has to go to work. He just sits on the train, and you end up as a woman taking on so much of that emotional labor. Again, this comes through conditioning. This comes through what you've been taught. It comes through what you feel is your responsibility. Also, a lot of times the feeling of like, well, if I don't do it, like it's not going to get done. And creating this dynamic, for example, within your relationship, but it could also be your relationships at work or like dynamics at work. Like it doesn't have to be in a familial relationship or romantic relationship. But we kind of start to play out these wounds. And I call them the woman work wounds because they are either passed down from the generations that came before us, how the women showed up in our lineages. It can also be passed down through our parents and like seeing women around us, our family situation growing up. And then, of course, like our lived experiences of like, how did that happen when I was at work? And like, did I feel like I had to show up and work harder in order to compete with my male counterpart and all of those things? And so the first step that I really look at is like, what are the belief systems and what are the wounds that are playing out this particular narrative? Because like we can, and this is what I see happen so often, is women come through and they're like, I just really want to have better time management. I just really want to be more productive. And so I've been trying all of these strategies and I've been trying all of these time management hacks and calendar tools and whatnot. And the first step is really understanding that that is not the problem. The deeper root problem is the fact that the belief systems and the narratives around work are preventing you from even being able to work productively because either we're taking on too much, like the caregiver wound, or we feel like we need to prove ourselves, so we overwork or burn out or whatnot. There's so many of them. But I really deeply believe, and this is where the neurolinguistic programming of my work comes in, that we have to heal the hustle before we can even look at the strategy part of it. Yeah. And then the other side is, of course, the strategy part of it. And that's actually aligning your work with your cyclical nature and understanding that we are not meant to be productive all the time. We're not meant to have that 100% energy level every single day of the week, every single hour. And that also comes with that mindset shift. We have to be able to make that new way of working actually feel safe, and following our own bodies and womb cycles feel safe again, because it has just been rejected for such a long time.
Okay, so let's go back to this belief then. So we've got these beliefs, which there are so many reasons for, as you said. I mean, I always say to everybody, the first step to any sort of healing process is awareness. You know, we've got to become aware of what we are believing. So what just talk us through, what would you do with a client to help heal that belief?
Yeah, so I really believe in kind of like helping the mind see the difference between what we think the problem is versus what the actual root cause is. And I think it's really powerful to, like you said, awareness, list out the symptoms that you're experiencing. So a lot of the times we think the symptoms are the problem. And so we try to solve for the symptoms with a solution that actually isn't changing anything, like the strategies that I was talking about before. But symptoms can be things like burnout, fatigue, not having enough energy, feeling really tired, insomnia. For me, also personally, there was like a lot of chronic acne. There were digestive issues, like all these things that our body is bringing up to show us like something is off here right now. And again, like in society, then we get put on birth control, for example, and it's like, just take this pill and like everything will go away. And it's really just covering up and band-aiding the actual root cause. And so we're like, oh, the symptoms are gone, so the root cause is gone. And that's just not true. But then we also have other things like the actual burnout and like how we're working, like feeling like we don't have enough time, feeling like we don't have enough energy, feeling scattered often, feeling like blurry in our focus, not being productive. And so, yeah, just being like having that space to be like, okay, I'm going to just see what my symptoms actually are. Because again, so often we don't even acknowledge them as symptoms because everyone's just experiencing them. So it's like, oh, I'm tired, or I'm so busy, or oh, I didn't have time to get that done, or whatever it is. And it's like we just normalize the symptoms that don't actually need to be normal in our life.
Yeah, and that's when a lot of the numbing out comes, where we have the distraction of, you know, constantly being on our phone, or the drinking, or whatever it is, zoning out to Netflix, and we just zone out of actually what is going on, because quite frankly, we're just so exhausted that we just need to kind of go, I can't deal with any of this. So, okay, so it's more about, we've got to really learn to tune in to actually what is going on, notice the signs or symptoms. I mean, it sounds quite similar to perimenopause when a woman is going through that. Yeah, we need to really just listen to our body, what is happening, and and just take note, and then you can actually start to put things in place. Okay, so once you realize, okay, this is not working for me, let's talk about this whole cyclical living, which is just, yeah, I mean, gosh, it sounds amazing. And I've heard bits about cyclical living because I know, for example, the English football team, they've kind of talked a bit about how they use tracking their cycles and everything in terms of how they play and how they train, and then how they actually perform, making sure that they're being fully supported at each stage of their cycle. So yes, tell me more, Olivia. How can we learn to live more cyclically?
Yeah, well, first of all, I didn't know that about the English football team. That is so cool. I have to go look that up afterwards. And yeah, okay, again, first things first is so much of that awareness and reconnecting with this inherent wisdom. And I really, really believe that this exists within all of us, this connection. And it's almost like a remembrance that when we start doing this work and start connecting, and I know that this is how I felt, and I see my clients like have that light bulb moment too, where they're like, oh my God, like it clicks now, it makes sense. And why did no one teach me this in school? Like, why did I not learn this growing up? And I think at its core, this is understanding your body. This is understanding yourself. This is understanding what you need and giving you a framework for that. And one of the things that I love so much about it is, like, we don't need these external frameworks. We don't need all of these systems and strategies that someone outside of us gives us, because we actually have those within. And really, at its core, it's just understanding what that process is, like what the phases are that we go through every single month, having that shift even in your mind of, oh, wow, I don't need to be on every single day because I don't follow a 24-hour cycle. I follow a 28-day cycle or a monthly cycle. And just starting to like experience that shift, I think gives in and of itself a lot of relief and like, okay, like this makes sense. And like, I'm allowed to actually feel the way that I've been feeling. And then noticing as you start to do that, how you start to support yourself more and more and things do start to flow.
Yeah, because men work on a 24-hour cycle, don't they? Which is why the working day is probably like it is, because and how
Yeah.
it's just possible just to keep on going.
Yeah.
But generally, and I know this is a very general view because as women are moving particularly into perimenopause and menopause, which obviously is very relevant to the listeners to this podcast. But generally speaking, we work on a sort of a 28-day cycle, but that obviously can go all over the place as our hormones change. But it can also be all over the place for women who are younger as well, for various factors. So I'd just love to know. So let's talk through these different phases then.
Yeah.
Because there's 4 different phases, aren't there?
So the 4 main phases, and the way that I like to look at them is through a seasonal lens, because I think that that's just really clear. And for anyone who like doesn't like science or want to remember any kind of like scientific words, it just makes things easy. And I like to layer it with not just the womb phases, but also with the moon phases. And the reason for that is because for my clients, and I would also say for your audience and the people who no longer have that consistent cycle or no longer bleed every single month at all, that there is still that monthly cycle that can be followed through the moon phases. So starting with spring, that's the first season. That's equivalent to the follicular phase of the womb cycle and the waxing moon. So we're getting the moon is growing. And would you like me to go into that a little bit more?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, definitely.
So spring is, again, love the seasons because it very clearly explains like spring is new beginnings. New seeds are being planted, new buds are starting to grow. And the way that I like to take this on in my work is to actually help my clients plan out their work, plan out their businesses, plan out their projects. And so the first phase is what I've coined as innovation in what I call the cycle of success. And so it's really like, hey, how do we apply this very natural rhythm that we experience internally to then our work externally in the world? And so, yeah, innovation phase, we're planning, we're brainstorming, we're prepping things, we're looking at timelines, we're setting the vision, we're making the benchmarkers for the goals that we're wanting to achieve. There's also like a lot of space for creativity here. So one of the things that I really love about this kind of planning in comparison to the kind of planning I used to do, and I think a lot of us do, is it's not meant to be super rigid. Like we want to set a plan, we want to hold the vision, we want to have the markers, but going into the project with the mindset that this is adjustable and that we want to be able to adjust it because inevitably life is going to happen and things are going to come up, then this is not meant to be a set plan. And then we have phase 2, which is the season of summer. It is the ovulation phase of our cycle and also the full moon. And so in the cycle of success, I call this illumination, kind of like that full moon energy of like you're stepping into the spotlight, whatever project you're creating, whatever you're doing, like this is that time to launch, the time to speak, the time to present, the time to share. You're illuminating yourself. And in the menstrual cycle and in the womb cycle, your ovulation phase is when you're really magnetic because that's when you're most fertile. And so, of course, like that's when ideally you want to attract a mate. So you are just like feeling really good in your body. It tends to be the time when your skin is doing really well. You just have that magnetism to you. Then we have phase 3, which is the phase or the season of fall, also the luteal phase in the menstrual cycle and the waning moon. So the moon is getting smaller now. And in the cycle of success, I call this phase culmination. And it is like the season of fall, like the leaves are starting to fall, change colors, like all of nature is starting to get ready for the darker days, for the upcoming winter, for hibernation. And in terms of work and success, this is the time to reflect, to analyze, to get into the nitty-gritty of editing, of wrapping things up. And that is also true in terms of the womb phase where we are getting ready for the menstrual cycle or for the monthly bleed. And then we have winter, which is the final and 4th phase. And that is equivalent to your period, so to your monthly bleed and also to the new moon. And in the cycle of success, I call this regeneration. So this is really that rest, that renewal phase. And really, I love to focus on the fall and winter phases because they're just so disregarded in terms of how we work. And so my whole purpose of that cycle of success is we want to complete the cycle. Like we want to go through every single phase in that process of whatever it is that we're creating because we're so good at just planning and executing. And so like completing the cycle really gives us that energy to reset at the end or to actually complete what we want to complete to, bring the cycle to a close.
It makes so much sense when you explain it like that. What a really lovely way to work. And I was just thinking, my gosh, I do not work like that at all. I mean, I have my own business and I'm probably very reactive to what is there, what is coming in. And actually, as you were speaking, I was thinking things like, for example, this podcast, maybe perhaps I should really intentionally, well, I think I might do this now after speaking to you, in that autumn phase, that's when I should be editing. Yeah, which kind of makes sense because sometimes that bit part of it, I'm just like, oh God, I don't really want to be doing this. But actually, maybe it might feel better. And I don't hate it at all, but it can be one of those jobs where it's a bit like, oh gosh, I've got to do quite a lot of this sort of stuff. So yeah, I really like that. I mean, what also though was crossing my mind is that for those people who are in a job and they're being employed by other people, they have deadlines to keep to. I'm just wondering how that would work. How can they make this work for them?
Absolutely. So I work with a lot of people and I've also been personally in that situation where, there's like other commitments that we have. There are other people who are expecting things of us. And I would say that that's, again, one of those things that are twofold. Obviously, like the greater revolution and mission for me and my perspective is like, how great would it be for more of us as women to learn this and to bring more of this into the workspace where it's acknowledged, where it's understood, where we can understand how much more productive we can be when we're working in line with our cycles, and that's actually celebrated as opposed to something that we feel really embarrassed or ashamed, or we see it as a nuisance. And so that's kind of the one side. But obviously there's the reality of everyday life right now as well. And one of the things that I love about cycle syncing and doing this work, and also just the energy of feminine energy, is that it's not meant to be perfect. It's not meant to be 100%. And I mean, we're not just because you're in your illumination phase or you're ovulating, like just because you didn't get all your podcast episodes recorded in that time, or because you weren't able to get the meeting or the job interview or the presentation in that slot is not a bad thing. I mean, the idea is that the more we come to understand this, the more we can start to plan as much as we can in alignment with these cycles. And one of the things that I say is even 20% is going to make a huge difference, because already that, like if you can put 20% of your work or even 10% of your work into these phases, you're going to be getting it done faster. You're going to feel better about it. You're going to be creating space to rest when you do actually need that rest phase then. And the other work that ends up falling in between is going to feel easier to do because you have put the attention towards the part that you can control. So it's definitely not an all or nothing thing. And even though I run my own business, I also don't do it all the time in that way, because that's just not how life works. Mm-hmm. It's more that understanding of, I understand how this works. I understand how I can support myself. And if it doesn't fall in the right phases, how can I support myself through that as well?
With menopause, for example, here in the UK, there's been a big push to get workplaces to recognize that women might not be feeling their best, to be able to put certain practices in place and policies in place to support these women. And yeah, you could, I mean, this is the same sort of thing. It's like, right, just need to bring it into the workplaces. It needs to have some women who are really kind of flying the flag and saying, this is how we will get better. And I suppose it's the proof is in the results, that it will increase productivity. It will increase people's satisfaction at work as well. I think just probably just having an awareness of that, this is how we work best, and actually just giving it a go and seeing if you can create a working month as opposed to, a working, doing it day by day.
Yeah. I feel like one of the things that is really powerful as well is show, don't tell. And so, I mean, I've done that within my relationship, and I've seen women do that in their places of work as well, where just doing it as much as you can for yourself and starting to see how the people around you respond. Like, wow, like you left work early today, or like you seem so focused, or like your mind, like the ideas that you're bringing through, like that's so clear. Like, what are you doing? And just kind of like seeing what starts to shift just from you doing that for yourself.
Yeah. Can we just talk about the rest bit of this?
Yes, absolutely.
Because this is the bit I think everyone's screaming at me, going, but I just haven't got a moment to rest. I would love, love, love to rest. But when do I do that? How do I do that?
Yeah. I mean, it's shocking because it's one of those like counterintuitive or counterproductive things, it seems, in society, where everyone wants rest, but none of us really know how to do it or know how to make time for it. And I think on the one hand, you said something really powerful before, which was kind of that avoidance or that numbing out. And we do the same thing with rest, where we think we're resting, but we're actually just avoiding what's actually coming up for us. So we numb out or we avoid by binging Netflix, or by going out and like having a weekend drinking bender, or dating around, or just having things in our life that kind of give us that distractions. They make us feel good. We do it with food a lot. That comes up as well. And the best way to describe it is rest compensation. So we have a long day, we're feeling exhausted, we're feeling irritated, and all we want is to feel like a little bit of that joy. And like, so we throw on the TV or we pull out the bag of chips or whatever, and it's like, this is going to give it to me. And what tends to happen there is, we want that feeling. So we don't go to bed on time. We then can't wake up in the morning. We then don't have the routine that supports us in actually having the energy. So it's kind of like a domino effect. It's bigger than just one specific thing. But this is where I come back to the cyclical nature and really understanding that every single month we are meant to have like 2 to 3 days of hibernation, and like literally seeing it that way of, how can I cancel things in my calendar? How can I potentially move meetings around? How can I work from home? How can I not go out with friends that night? How can I say no to that big event so that I can really just be and create the space around that? And of course, like there are things that come up. It's never going to be perfect, like we said before, but it's just understanding that we have the cyclical nature. And as we start to adjust the way that we plan our month, in line with that, that's where it starts to become clear, like, okay, I don't need to do this every single day. I don't need to do this every single weekend, but could I just do it this one day of the month to start bringing that in more? And that's kind of like more of an overarching thing, because I do think the next step is incorporating it consistently. And that's something that I call having a rhythm of rest. And the more we have that rhythm of rest in our everyday lives, the easier it's going to also be to regenerate. We don't need 5 days of rest because we are constantly giving it to ourselves, as opposed to waiting until we're like at that enough is enough point.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think also what you said really, again, highlights how important it is for us to all track our cycles. If you still are having a cycle, and even if it is very erratic, it's just really important to tune in to your body, what is going on. So you can then, as you say, plan more carefully for when these periods of rest are going to really support you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't have a cycle, to follow the moon, because I do, I mean, I'd be curious because you can probably speak to this better than I can, but we do have that cyclical rhythm within us, and that's not something that the body just forgets from one year to the next like that. It's kind of like an encoded energy within us. And so that rhythm, that cyclical rhythm that we can go through every month, even if it's not inherently your womb or your body's rhythm, but the rhythm of like the moon cycle as well.
Yeah, and that's pretty much a 28-day cycle. So
Yeah.
some people listening might go, oh gosh, that sounds a bit woo and a bit, but I promise you, I'm very aware of the moon cycle, because I know when there's a full moon, I'm just like, yeah, come on. I really do feel so much more energized, and that is when I know I need to be doing things which are and I need to be on my best format. So yes, it definitely is. There is definitely something in there. Is there anything else, Olivia, which you think would be good for my listeners to know?
Yeah, I mean, more of a little piece of advice I would say is really, as you mentioned, this could be something that feels very overwhelming, that feels very new, that feels like, oh my God, I already have so much on my plate and I have to do this new thing and I have to learn it. And that's really not the point. The point is that this is actually meant to make things a lot more simple for you. This is a way to simplify your life, a way to allow your body to be that guidance system and to create success as an inside job from the inside out. And so kind of releasing any of that additional stress around, needing to do something new. And as I mentioned before, this is an inherent rhythm that exists within you. So as soon as you start tuning into it, it's going to become clear how natural this actually is. And even if it isn't a consistent cycle, or wherever you're at in your life, like the inherent energy of just being a woman, being someone with a womb, is going to start to shine through. And so this is a process of simplification. This is not a process of putting more on your plate. And I would say the most simple piece of advice is really to just start learning what are the 4 main phases, as we talked about today. And I know I gave like a lot of layers, but I would say pick the womb or pick your moon, pick your womb or the moon. Pick one of the two, don't do both, like keep it simple again, and then just start noticing like how you feel in each of the phases, and make it more of like a journaling exercise for the first couple months of, like you said, awareness, noticing, acknowledging, not needing to change anything right away. And as you go through each cycle, start tying back, like, what was the theme of this cycle? Like, okay, what season am I in, for example, so that we're kind of also understanding, okay, this is what this phase is about. This is what this phase is about. And kind of going through it the way that you would like learn the alphabet in kindergarten. Like, it gets to be fun, it gets to be easy, it gets to be simple. And again, it's going to be such an inherent natural part of who you are. It's going to be a remembrance that as you go through it, it's going to just start to ease you into your natural state of being, your natural essence.
Yeah, and I think just the awareness that we are cyclical, but our cycle is very different to a man's cycle, and yet we've been forced into this very masculine way of working And actually just having this awareness that actually it doesn't suit us. It doesn't kind of allow us to kind of be in our flow, for us to feel it like it's easy. Whereas this way of working does allow us to feel that ease, to feel that flow.
Yeah. And I would say, to add to that, you don't need to settle. You don't need to settle for not having enough energy, or feeling like you don't have enough time in your day, or feeling like you can't give enough of yourself to your work and to your family and to your partner. Like, that is not necessary. And this is the way to really allow yourself the space to have it all.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much, Olivia. It's been so interesting talking to you. And I really do think that there is definitely, so much in here which people can really take away and just bring to their awareness and give it a go, because they've got nothing to lose, really. If anyone would like to get in touch with you, find out more about what you do, learn more about this, where can they come and find you, Olivia?
Yeah, so I hang out a lot on Instagram at Olivia Heine Coaching, Heine spelled Heine. And also I have a podcast, the Essence Shown podcast, that comes out weekly, where we dive into all topics and themes around working like a woman. So working with your cycle, healing the hustle, all of those things. And you can find out more about my services. And also I have a few freebies on my website, oliviaheine.com.
Fantastic. I'll put all of that into the show notes. I suppose my last question to you, Olivia, is, you obviously are very busy. All those things you've just listed, you have a podcast, you have your own business, you have a weekly newsletter, all these things, it takes time. So how have you found working like this? How does it affect all the work? Do you still feel really busy, or does it feel much more easy?
It feels so much more easy, and it feels like so much permission giving. Like, it was like a whole permission slip that I got when I started going down this path, where like there is no more guilt around taking my foot off the pedal when I'm in my menstrual cycle. Like, when I'm on my period, there's no more, like, anytime when I'm pre-period, also like that PMS zone, I do 100% notice like the little inner critic likes to come in and be like, are you doing enough? And like, what about this? And like the doubts start to arise. And it's been such a powerful shift to acknowledge that that's not the truth. It's just the hormonal phase that I'm in. So I would say absolutely, this has been the biggest game changer in my life, of not just being in a place where I feel really comfortable and confident in what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. But also, of course, for really tapping into when I'm productive, how to be in a flow state and harness that magnetism when it's there, and give myself permission to really enjoy my life outside of that.
And do you find you get everything done that you want to get done?
Shockingly, I would say yes.
Amazing.
And oftentimes, if it's not like that, I realize, okay, there's something else going on, and usually it's some sort of mindset thing that is creating pressure or making me feel like I need to do more. And the reason it's not getting done is because it's actually just not that important.
Amazing. Well, thanks again for coming on the podcast. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and it's definitely inspired me to give this a go. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Here are some of the key takeaways. Number 1, living in sync with your cycle can transform burnout into living a life with so much more ease. Olivia's own journey is a testament to this, as she overcame burnout by aligning her work with her natural rhythms. Number 2, external expectations of success are a major cause of burnout. When we constantly strive to meet external standards, we put immense pressure on ourselves, leading to exhaustion and dissatisfaction. Number 3, pay attention to the symptoms of not working in sync with your rhythms. These symptoms can include fatigue, irritability, anxiety, and difficulty concentrating. Number 4, understand the 4 main phases of a 28-day cycle. Each phase has its own unique energy and potential, and learning to work within these phases can really optimize your productivity and well-being. Number 5, remember that feminine energy is not meant to be perfect. even putting 20% of your work into these phases will make a difference. It's not an all or nothing thing. Number 6, embrace the power of the show don't tell approach. Instead of constantly talking about your goals, focus on taking action and letting your results speak for themselves. Number 7, utilize the rhythm of rest to create a consistent flow in your life. Rest isn't a luxury, it's an essential tool for sustainable success. And number 8, find ways to live cyclically even if you no longer have your monthly cycle. Following the moon cycle can help you tap into your cyclical nature. We all have an encoded cyclical energy within us. It's just about allowing ourselves to tap into it. If you are still here with me, thank you so much for sticking around, staying with me, and for listening to this episode. I really do hope that there's something in here which is going to be helpful for you as you move forward. If you have enjoyed this episode, I would be super grateful if you could hit follow, subscribe, write a review even on Apple Podcasts. It really, really does help me with this podcast. So thank you so much if you've already done that. If you'd like to get in touch, all of both my details and Olivia's details are all in the show notes. All that is left really for me to say is have a fantastic week ahead. Take good care of yourself, and I will speak to you next time. Loads of love. Bye.